I think this is probably one of the most misunderstood and slightly controversial topics in photography. Everyone talks about sensor size, but most people get it wrong. One of the most common questions that I get asked is, do I need a full frame camera, or should I upgrade to a full frame camera if I'm using maybe an APS-C camera? And I completely get it, because when you are buying a new camera, you want to make sure that you are buying the right one that is going to be suitable for your needs. But the truth is that every camera, no matter what size sensor it has, can produce incredible results. And what matters the most is the sorts of photography you're going to be doing with it, what you enjoy shooting and what you're going to be using it for. And at some point, I think it's fair to say that every photographer gets drawn towards full frame cameras, and that might be down towards the way things are marketed. It might be down to seeing your favorite photographers using full frame cameras, and a full frame camera can sometimes feel like the end goal. Like once you've got a full frame camera, you've made it and you can go and shoot whatever it is that you could possibly want to. The truth is that as beneficial as a full frame camera can be, in a lot of situations, it isn't always necessarily going to be the right choice for you. And maybe an APS-C sensor or Micro Four Thirds might be better suited for what it is that you are going to be creating. So I thought I'd make this video talk about different sensor sizes. So hopefully, if you are looking at buying a new camera and you're not sure what to look for when you are looking at different sensor sizes and different camera bodies, hopefully this might help you out a little bit and give you an idea as to what to look for. Starting with full frame, because that is the sensor size that matches 35mm film. So when everything back in the day was shot on film, 35mm became the most popular size of film, and it almost became the standard back in the 1800s. And a full frame sensor matches the equivalent size of a 35mm frame. Full frame cameras on the face of it sound very impressive because they have a much larger sensor than Micro Four Thirds or APS-C cameras, which means that you can capture more light, you have a much greater dynamic range, and you can create a shallower depth of field, which, dare I say it, gives it that more cinematic look that everyone seems to love. And they also perform better in low light as well, because they can capture a great amount of light, which makes them incredibly useful for professional work. And while all of that is true, what often gets left out of the conversation is everything else that comes along with full frame cameras. So the size, the weight, and the cost of the bodies and the lenses. But then there are also actual shooting reasons as to why a full frame sensor might not be ideal for you as well. So for example, a lot of sports and wildlife photographers like to shoot Micro Four Thirds and APS-C sensors because they have a lot of benefits in other areas, such as faster readout speeds, smaller files, and there is also the crop factor to think about as well. So for example, an APS-C camera has a 1.5 times crop factor on top of a full frame sensor, and a Micro Four Thirds camera has a 2 times crop factor. And that crop factor can actually become very useful when you are doing things like sports and wildlife photography, because you need that extra reach. APS-C cameras fit in this really nice sort of middle ground because they're not overly expensive, but you're still getting incredible image quality, dynamic range, subject separation, and a lot of the time they tend to be a lot smaller than full frame cameras as well. And they can also become more versatile. So for example, if you're using a 50mm lens on an APS-C camera, that with the 1.5 times crop factor, you're shooting around 75mm in a much smaller body, which means that you've got a much more compact setup that is ideal for portrait photography or street photography. For things like travel or everyday photography, that is absolutely ideal because you don't always want to be carrying around big full frame cameras with chunky lenses on them. You want something nice and small and compact that isn't necessarily going to be getting in your way and distracting you. And APS-C cameras have matured massively over the years, and brands like Fuji, Canon, Sony all have some amazing APS-C cameras that produce incredible results in both photo and video, and that means you're not really compromising on anything anymore inside that smaller body. And you will honestly be surprised as to how many photos that you see when you're looking at photography across social media or wherever you look at your photography, how much of it is shot on crop sensor APS-C cameras when you might have thought it was full frame. And most people could quite happily shoot on APS-C and be very happy with the results they're getting all of the time. And then there is Micro Four Thirds cameras, which I think are massively underrated. And it was actually the first system that was developed for mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras. And Lumix led the way with that with the G1 back in 2008, which doesn't actually seem that long ago when you think about it, 17 years ago or so. When you think about how fast mirrorless camera technology has developed over the years, it is a long time, but it doesn't feel that long. Does that make sense? But you can get some incredibly small, lightweight cameras that are packed full of features. And if you're into hiking, travel, vlogging, or you just want to enjoy photography without carrying loads of heavy gear around with you, Micro Four Thirds is genuinely perfect. And with that 2x crop factor, like I mentioned before, that can come in very useful for things like wildlife photography, because you can get, for example, if you're shooting 200mm on a full frame camera, that is the equivalent of 400mm on Micro Four Thirds in a much smaller body, which means that you've not got to lug around tons of camera gear into the forest to go and photograph birds, for example. It is a much smaller, much more manageable system, but it is one that you don't actually hear spoken about that much. And I think that's a real shame, because it does have some huge benefits to it. I would love to see Lumix bring out some new small Micro Four Thirds cameras. There are bigger Micro Four Thirds cameras like the GH7, which I think is still probably one of my favorite cameras that I've ever used, but it is the size of a full frame camera in terms of the body. I'd love to see some smaller Micro Four Thirds cameras again, especially like the GM5, which is absolutely tiny. If you're not familiar with the GM5, I will link to Emily from Micro Four Nerds video about the GM5, which you can go and have a look at after this. It is absolutely brilliant. But here's the thing, when you're buying a new camera, it can be very easy in today's world, because of the way things are marketed and sold to us. It can be incredibly easy to get stuck in the world of looking at specs and megapixels, dynamic range, ISO performance, low light performance, all of that stuff. But the reality is that any camera that you buy these days, especially made within the last 5 years or so, is incredible, and it is more than capable of being used for just a hobby all the way through to being used professionally. And the only thing that truly matters is what you're going to be using it for, and making sure that you buy the right camera for you, because what suits one person might not suit someone else. So if you're going to be doing a lot of traveling, you might want something smaller and lighter that's not going to get in the way, maybe with a fixed lens on it. If you're going to be doing wildlife photography, that 2x crop factor on Micro Four Thirds with much smaller lenses might become very useful for you. But if you're going to be shooting a lot of high-end commercial work and you love that shallow depth of field, then full frame might be the way that you want to go. But don't let sensor size purely dictate which camera you buy, because a bigger sensor doesn't always mean better for you. Think about your workflow, think about what it is you're creating, your style, and how it will fit into your life, because it's who's making the photos that matter, not the camera you use. For me personally, I do use full frame cameras because they fit my workflow perfectly for the sorts of things I create. I'm using the S1 II to film this right now, and the Lumix S1 R2 is my main go-to photography camera, but I've shot plenty of images on cropped sensor cameras that I've got hung up on my wall. This image is printed in A2 size. This is Jimmy Anderson. If you're familiar with cricket, you'll know who he is. But this is A2. This was shot on an APS-C camera, and it looks absolutely amazing. I don't know if you can see that without seeing my reflection in here. Look at that, that's not very good, is it? But yeah, that was shot on an APS-C camera, printed to A2, and it looks absolutely amazing. I've never once looked at it and thought, I wish I shot that on full frame. So sensor size doesn't necessarily matter in ways that you think it might. It is more about using the camera that you want to go out and create with, something you enjoy using, and it's not always a bigger sensor means better, if that makes sense. It's just the camera that fits your workflow and your style the best. So if you're new to photography or you're looking at upgrading your camera, don't feel pressured that you have to go for a full frame camera to get the best results, because you don't. Yes, it is a great format. I love my full frame cameras, but it's not the only one. And what really makes the difference is you, your eye, your timing, your creativity. That is where you will start to notice the real results and differences and your improvement in your photography. A lot of the time, too much emphasis is put on the gear, but if you're not developing your own skills, no upgrade to your camera, your gear, whatever, is gonna make you a better photographer. Pick the camera that makes you want to go out and shoot and want to just enjoy being out with your camera. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you want to go and watch another video all about the Lumix S1R2, I recommend you go and watch this video next, and I will see you there.